Oh yeah!
Welcome everyone to this edition of Fish Stripes Live. We are here tonight to preview the series versus your Miami Marlins going up against the division rival Philadelphia Phillies. And since our last stream, well, we had two series happen, Texas Rangers and the New York Mets. But before that, let me introduce you to our esteemed panel. First, we have Isaac Azul, Eli Sussman, Adam Magbani floating in front of the stadium. Behind the logo, we have Alex Carver and our special guest, Mr. 8305. George, Mr. Eights, it is so great to have you on here tonight. This is an awesome guest.
Thanks for having me, guys. Yeah, I'm excited.
George, I wanted to go to you first. Just what have you seen from the Marlins in your point this year, and is the food better than the lineups you usually see?
The food is better than the lineup because of injuries. No food. There have not been any food injuries that I've heard of. We've had the lineup basically the same lineup all season. So, longevity, consistency is key in the MLB. And luckily the food hasn't had to deal with any injuries.
Yeah. Eli, we had a 2-game series against the Rangers. And actually we did have a lot of runs. We had 12 runs in total that series, which is something I don't think I've been able to say in a long, long, long time. Eli, how great was it to actually see some runs scored?
It was refreshing. It was refreshing to see them do what you're supposed to do, because if you look deep at what happened during that second game and during that big inning, like this game was decided by the 29th man on each team for the doubleheader. With the Marlins, Brian Hoeing tried his best to kind of blow up the game in the top of that inning in the nightcap. And then the anonymous relievers that came out for the Rangers in the bottom of that inning, I don't even remember the first name of that guy. AJ Alexi, whoever he was the one that kind of started the fire for them in the bottom of that inning. And then whoever came in kind of just like poured gas on it. So they took care of business against, the weakest links of a team that already has like very shaky pitching depth. And that's what you're supposed to do. But for whatever reason, this is a team that, as you've mentioned, that we've gone months without seeing a rally like that, where they get hit after hit and they bat around an entire inning. And Charles LeBlanc with 2 doubles against 2 different pitchers in the same inning. Like it shouldn't be like that much of an anomaly to have a rally like that. And it kind of speaks to how rough things have been that felt so unusual. But that was fun. That was a lot of fun. I have to admit, I was only like half paying attention because it was during Monday Night Football. So I think I had it muted for part of it, but then when I turned it on, I was kind of going back and forth. We're at that time of year where if they were doing this stuff early in the year, people get really fired up and going crazy about it. But to see that lineup with a lot of young guys actually have that kind of moment, that was fun.
Yeah. Adam, let me get your thoughts on it, especially on Trevor Rogers, who came out and had a really great start. Probably one of the better starts we've seen this year. This looked like 2021, like all-star Trevor Rogers in this start. What did you see from Mr. Rogers, Adam?
Yeah, so no, it's funny how you said it there, Mr. Rogers, but he's got
I was going for that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, so Trevor's back, man. Like so far so good the way he's been pitching. He's been going somewhat deeper into games. And he's really been able to regain that strikeout ability that he had last year as an all-star. He's still low and he's limiting the walks and keeping the ball on the ground. Obviously, he did allow those couple of home runs against the Phillies. However, in general, he has had a pretty decent ground ball rate overall. And he's been very, very effective. And like we said, it just has been very unlucky for the rest of the year that he's been pitching. So now that he had a chance to reset himself in AAA, or wherever they think it was in AAA. Now that he's back in the major leagues, he is now going to be back and ready, and he's going to be a future staple in the rotation for many years to come. And it's just going to be another weapon. What the next Marlins manager, whoever it'll be, potentially Don Mattingly, we don't know, that he'll be able to use. Just another pitch and another gun in their arsenal.
Yeah. George, Mr. Eats, that game, the Marlins split 1-1. If anything that maybe you saw from that game that maybe really interested you, or something really that stood out to you when watching that game or looking at the game after it happened?
I think the biggest takeaway is the fact that Trevor Rogers struck out 9, and that's, hope that he's back. I heard like a lot of his techniques and his mechanics. We can go into it. I haven't done the side-by-side comparison to beginning of the season to where he's at now after he's been called back up. I'm sure you guys might be able to pull that up eventually and see if maybe he made a shift in his mechanics, see if it's a confidence thing. Whatever it is, I'm glad to see that it worked and the bats were able to help support him.
Yeah. Isaac, I'll finish off the Rangers with you. We mentioned the hits. We mentioned the pitching. Anything that also stuck out to you? Anything maybe we haven't mentioned that really caught your eye? BA had a really great series, had 4 hits in that doubleheader. Is there anyone really that stuck out to Isaac?
No, I think you guys, you hit it on the head. It's Trevor Rogers, man. I think he looked as good as he did at his best in 2021. I have never seen him look that phenomenal, striking out 9 with these. So he had 18 swings and misses in the entire game. And like Adam said, he's back, and that's huge for this team with all the lefty surplus of pitching that they have. Luzardo, Rogers, Braxton even pitched pretty well in his return. So I think just that, you got 3, good left-handed starting pitchers in your rotation that will go into spring training next year, vying for spots. So I think that just gives you a little bit more depth to be able to do what you want with. So we'll see how that goes in the offseason.
All 3 of the teams that Trevor has faced since coming back from the IL, they're teams that usually hit lefties. The Phillies do that. The Rangers do that really well, even though overall they're kind of iffy. And even the Rays. So those are the 3 teams he's faced so far. So there's been no cheapies. And the fact that he's been able to go deep into those games, that's what kind of sticks out. That was the main gripe. That was the main concern I had like early on in the years, that he just never had a really complete outing, where even when he was preventing runs, he just wasn't going deep into games. And for him to do that now regularly in these outings, even if he's not perfect, even if he's getting away with a few mistakes, I felt like in this past outing, he may have taken advantage of a team that was kind of like not thrilled to give up their off day to play a doubleheader in the middle of September. So maybe that was favorable circumstances, but overall, I think you do see some of the differences with the conviction that he's pitching with, and really subtle mechanical differences that are working out for him. So it's exciting. And I'm still not back to the place where I was with him like the first half of last year and feeling convinced. Like, this is a guy, you need to put yourself in the mindset of where we were just a few months ago. Entering the season, it was a legit question as to who was the number 2 in this rotation. And it was between Trevor and Pablo. Maybe you can make a stretch for somebody else, but it was pretty even between those 2, if not leaning more towards Trevor. Like, I just remembered myself. I put myself in that mindset where, like, I wasn't totally sure as to whether Pablo was the right guy to even enter the season, ahead of Trevor in the pecking order. So that's kind of the regard that he was held in just entering this year. And so even if he's not going to get all the way back to that, he's an important player to watch. He may be like one of the most important players to monitor down the stretch and to see how close he could get to like totally getting everybody's trust back.
Yeah. George, I wanted to ask you about a certain player at the Marlins who's not going to be playing for the rest of the season and hasn't played for in a long time. That's Mr. Jazz Chisholm Jr., someone who's been going through rehab, not doing baseball activities, hasn't played since before the All-Star break, and his last time on the diamond was during batting practice before the All-Star game. What does it mean to you when the Marlins have that young player and they're not able to put him on the field, and someone who gets injured and someone who brings in a lot of attention, a lot of eyeballs, for a player like that to go down and then not be able to play again the rest of the season?
Yeah, man. Like, as you're painting it, it's a buzzkill for the organization from the top down, from the fan base to the the execs. The reason you're building a lineup hopefully around a franchise player, and when that guy goes down, the fans go into shambles. So it's a shame, but it seems to be out of our control. So there's not much we can do as a fan base, but just kind of hope for him to have a speedy recovery. And at this point, just start working towards the next season.
Yeah. Talking Jazz and Soler for that Soler aspect. Let me go to Adam. Adam, Soler was Soler power, as Eli's wearing there. Supposed to come in, hit 25, 35 home runs. Have that power in the lineup, and yet we haven't seen him again a very long time. Adam, just how is it when the Marlins spend that much money and then just not really much performance on the field, especially due to injuries?
Yeah, I mean, just in general, we had greater expectation for this team with the free agent signings that they made. Soler was not one. I mean, really, the three that they made with Soler and Avi, I haven't really just those two. I wasn't a big fan of, just because I wanted to see how much progression there was with natural progression there was with the minor league guys. Obviously, there hasn't been much, so it's been a double whammy because both haven't been producing, the free agent signings and the minor leagues. Soler has always been kind of a risky bet, just in the sense that, yes, his power is his selling ticket, his selling point. However, he doesn't really have much more to speak of beyond that. And when he's not making contact, it's not pretty at all. And the profile it's a very risky profile, to say the least. And it's something that I would tend to avert from if I were to be spending money. And even like if I were to acquire a player like him, it would be on the cheap end. And I would not want to have to spend like cash if I had to, let alone like trade for someone. And it's been rough to watch with the free agent signings, but definitely with Soler has been even more. It's like he's turned it on. Like he had like this stint in the middle of the season, but in general, with a guy who's like a bad first, like he's a pure like just a guy in the box. It's going to be difficult to. It's been difficult to watch.
What are the odds he opts out?
Oh,
I always thought they were extremely low entering the year, and now they're 0%. Just does not make sense. In fact, a little bit of news specifically today is that they sent him out to LA to see a back specialist. I mean, for whatever is wrong with his back, now been a couple months now, like they don't have a good answer to like how to get over it. It's still bothering him. So the fact that he had to go all the way across the country to meet with somebody about how to like address it, I mean, that shows you how like significant this is. And that even when he was on the field, you have to take into account that he was battling through something, which is why, if they do get it addressed the right way, I'm cautiously optimistic that he's going to be a lot better next year. The question is, like, if you're dealing with some sort of chronic back issue, are you actually going to be on the field every day? The thing with him entering this year is that he was at least durable. He had, I think the previous year he played in every single game, right? And if that's probably not going to be the realistic expectation now for a guy going into his 30s who has this new issue popping up. They'll have to get this right. There's a lot of pressure on this course of treatment in order to like get it figured out for next year. But he's going to be here next year. They're not going to be able to dump him because it's a $15 million salary for next season. And I don't know. Some people were excited about him coming aboard. I don't know if this meant anything to you, George, the fact that he was Cuban and the fact that he'd been this established major leaguer and had those accolades as World Series MVP. Is that something that you care about, that you think a lot of fans actually cared about at the time?
Yeah, so before I get to that point, I think I can't help to think about maybe it's more than just his back. And I'm not talking about confidence issues with him. I think it's, does he like Mattingly as a coach? Is he pulling a Kawhi? Is there some sort of thing where does he have the yips, or does he just doesn't care to use his efforts to get back into a season where there's no shot in a playoff run? If you don't have a respect for your manager, I can see a guy doing that and just saying, hey, I don't know what my back is, what the issues are with my back. And if he had a respect for his manager and wanted to play for under him, you'd want to play whether you're 100% or 75%. Obviously, if you're risking your the next season, that's a different story. But like you said, he's been injured for how long now, and we still don't know exactly what the issue is. I think it might be something bigger than just his back. But that's a topic that we can go on after this one. To answer your question, yeah, signing a guy like Soler that has those connections with the Cuban community and the Hispanic community with such a power bat and high energy when he does make contact, I think that's the type of guy that the Marlins wanted, to help bring community, help bring people into the stands, into the games, kind of replace that Stanton-esque type of bat in the sense of K or home run and
Right.
long and moonshot. So I liked the signing. I didn't love it. I think I'm glad we signed a guy. We signed a big bat, a big player. We spent money, especially that added value of him resonating with the community. Now, I don't know if we want to get there, but I think the manager needs to reflect the players that we're bringing in. I don't see Manningley, as the comments had mentioned somewhere, as high energy. I think he's a great guy, a great coach, one of the best to ever wear pinstripes. But I do think we might need someone younger, maybe someone Hispanic, maybe someone that could relate to the players better, relate to a younger audience, relate to the community. And Mattingly, as we've seen over the years, the longest tenured coach, and it's way below 500. He's not that guy.
Yeah. There are a couple of things on that. Soler, pure speculation, but he is one of the guys in that clubhouse. I'm in that clubhouse a lot, and he's one of the guys that probably smiles the least amount. He's one of the more serious guys, and he's a guy that usually tends to have fun. When he was Kansas City, he was with Atlanta. He's a high energy guy, and he just really was tough to get quotes out of. Not very happy. I think I saw him smile once when he was trying on the kid's jacket. And the thing about Donnie, I'm a big fan of Don Mattingly, but the way he attacks the umpires, he doesn't look like he's all in there as much as it's hard to blame him. It's September, the team is 45 games under 500.
Yeah,
but you still like to see some emotion when your best player Jazz gets thrown out of the game in New York, and he sort of just lets it happen and doesn't even argue. So it's I see both those points as pretty valid.
Let me throw this out there to you guys, panel. Are there any names that you might, I don't want to say want to see or hope to see, but if are there any names that at the very least could interest you for the Marlins?
I will forever and always back Jose Oquendo for a managerial position. Forever and always. He may not be the pick, but I definitely back him up to be a manager at some point. And yeah, he was their third base coach for the longest time, and I don't know, well respected.
All right. So no Joe Madden, no Joe Girardi?
No, neither one. Neither. I think the first change that has to be made is bringing one of these homegrown, not necessarily homegrown in the sense of Marlins homegrown, but maybe Miami homegrown, into the president's chair. We need someone Jeter's old role should be going to a guy like Raul Ibanez that knows baseball, knows Miami better than anybody, wants to be a part of it, has those good connections with the Lowells, with the Conines, with the Marlins greats, and understands what the Marlins have been missing over the years. And then he can make the decision on whoever the manager may be. It may not be it can be a first-time manager, but if he's young, energetic, has that connection to Miami and the community and the roster, I'm all in.
Yeah, those are some good names right there.
Everybody loves mentioning Joe Espada. That's in the low-hanging fruit. People mentioning he checks every box as somebody that's worked with smart organizations, that's bilingual, that's been here before very briefly, it has that history somewhat, and that he's still young enough that you feel like he can actually hold down the job for a long time if he's successful off the bat. So I'll throw that out there. It's not one, personally, it's hard for me to get a feel for it, because as much as you do talk about, bringing in more brain power to the front office, I think this is going to be a Kim Ng decision. Kim Ng, she inherited Don Mattingly, and last year, kind of went down to the wire in terms of agreeing on his option for this year. It's possible that they could have said goodbye last year, actually, instead of even dragging it on this long. Bring her in, the idea is that she was going to bring in as much of her own people as possible before having any of the power taken away from her. So it's going to come down to that. And what's been so hard is that it's been a while since she had direct connections to people on the team level across baseball, because she had spent the previous decade working in the MLB offices. And that's why it's just hard to like follow the breadcrumbs and get an idea as to where she might go with this one. I know a lot of people have been asking about that. I just don't think it's like the biggest problem with the team. You know, the biggest problem with the team, well,
is the team.
Is the team. And the fact that some of these other deeper issues in terms of, as we've talked about on the show a bunch of times, it's about the fact that on the deepest levels of the organization, not developing hitters to form the right habits that make them successful. And that even those that do have success in the minor leagues, when they get to the majors, they don't sustain that success as well. And then obviously at the highest level, in terms of when you pick the guys to spend real money on, not spending that money wisely or efficiently to get the safest players to raise the floor to your team. So I think all that stuff is going to be more consequential than the manager. But I understand why the manager is top of mind, because that's the front-facing person that you deal with, that you look at, that you hear from every single day after every game. And as most of us expect, we're final 21 games of the Don Mattingly era. And we're not far away from having like a new voice that's in our lives every single day.
Yeah, and Gabriel brings up a good point that I was thinking about. I don't think she lasts more than a year. I think she might even be gone, you know, as soon as possible. She was brought in by Jeter and his connections. You know, if I don't care for, you know, her general signings and all that. I think I would want someone new. That might just be a hot take, but
yeah, you know, a name that I hear rumbling when I'm walking around Lone Depot Park is, obviously it's not going to happen, but, you know, Theo Epstein. You know, that's someone that, wow, he saved Chicago, he saved Boston. Can he do the same thing? Come to Miami. He is working with Major League Baseball. That's where Kim Ng was working. Is he someone that she can recruit back out of working with the league?
He'll be a good pick for sure. I like that.
I think he might have better things to do.
Yeah.
He's won the game.
So would I, but
He's too good.
We're getting too far ahead when it comes to Kim. Honestly, she was brought in for a reason, and for a very good reason. Has it been the greatest introduction to her role that she's in right now in terms of being in full control of this team? No, it has not. And I still go back to it, and I'll go back to it now. This is an individual who learned how to perform her duties in big market organizations. And now she's in a much smaller organization and a much smaller market organization and trying to make her way. And it hasn't been the best. We can just say that it hasn't, being completely honest. And, you know, the press conferences that she's had, some of which of you guys have been there for, myself included, Isaac included, the answers that given are not the best. We can just be completely honest with what we hear. Fans know that as well. But I think you need to give it more than 1 year. And she is going to be given, as we heard from Bruce Sherman in Barry Jackson's article, she is going to be given more than just this last 1 year to prove it. And I think she deserves that. So I think we need to chill on a little bit of the knee-jerk reactions to just one season and hope that she can fix it. Can she? That's a different situation. Like if we're in the same position going into 2024, then it's a discussion. I think right now, though, that we need to stay the course and give her the opportunity that she really does deserve. So
this is her second season, Alex.
yeah.
Well, it's her first season being in full control, Isaac. Let's just call it for what it is.
You know, George, I have a question.
There were a lot of people that she was running her decisions through. It wasn't just her. Yes, she was the general manager, yes. But there were a lot of people that she had to go through the ropes with to get her decisions to be made.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So in terms of being in full control of the organization, this is really her first full season. So and I think she deserves more than just 1 year in the position that she's in, honestly. And that may be an unpopular opinion. There's probably fans screaming at Alex right now that he's an idiot, and that's okay. But we need to give her a little bit more time to figure this out because she deserves that. So, yeah.
George, what were your thoughts on Michael Hill, the old president of baseball ops? Or you didn't?
I know. I would say indifferent.
Really? I was a big fan of his. That's why I thought like the perfect solution was to hire Kim Ng, have her work under Michael Hill, someone who's been doing this for a long time, a very educated man.
Yeah.
And then maybe if you want to move on, have Kim Ng take over the reign. But they just set her up in a position to fail. You have, no experience in Derek Jeter, who she's working under. You have no experience in Bruce Sherman.
Oh,
And then, whoops, we lost our guest. Did he not like Michael Hill that much?
Probably not.
I didn't kick him out. Hopefully he comes back.
I think he knew who he was.
I'll have him message me if he is any. Oh, he's back.
Sorry. Yeah,
Sorry, no,
crashed on me.
Michael Hill just kicked them out.
I thought you hated Michael Hill that much, so.
No. I actually was going to agree with your comments and say that would have been a great move, but thing dropped on me.
Yeah.
Let's switch this up. We're talking about the old. Let's talk about the new and the very brand new, which is the new call-up for the Marlins, Mr. Jordan Groshans. For those of you who may not know, Jordan Groshans was traded to Miami at the deadline for Anthony Bass, Zach Pop, and a player to be named later. Alex, for Jordan Groshans, what have you seen from him when he was traded to Miami, and was there any difference between him with the Marlins than him with the Blue Jays?
Look at that base on balls. All right.
Yeah, no, I think it was a good change of scenery for this kid. He is still only 22 years old. You can see the highlights on the screen. Really good bat to ball is what I see from Groshans. The hit tool is probably his best tool, but I told you guys this earlier, and I put it on Twitter myself on my account, is that he does a lot of things really well, but I don't think he really has a true one true standout tool. You know what I mean? So to me, when I look at a player like that, when I look at a prospect like that, I think, really good floor in terms of being a Major League Baseball player, but kind of a limited ceiling in terms of what he can do in terms of being a everyday player. So that's kind of what I get at when I talk about a guy that can be good, and definitely a service to an organization, any Major League organization, but kind of a guy that I would limit the ceiling with when it comes to being an everyday player. So I think this guy's good, plays a bunch of different positions. Definitely not a shortstop. He's had his tryouts there. He was drafted as a shortstop, has moved to third base more regularly since then, has kind of spackled a little bit in the outfield a little bit, I'm pretty sure. So, it's a guy that can be good. Definitely has some tools that can be of a credit to a major league organization. But I kind of temper my ceiling with him right now. Can he fix that and come by some more power and become more of a prototypical starting third baseman? Sure. But we got to see it. So I'm glad that he's getting his call now, because it's one less guy that they have to protect going into the Rule 5 draft next season, as I always talk about. So I'm glad that he's getting his opportunity to show it, because the Marlins have nothing else to lose. So this is definitely, except for maybe a couple more games. But no, this is a good call up. It's a good decision to make. In terms of when the terms of this call up is definitely a good decision to make. I'm all for it, and I hope he does well. So I'm definitely hoping for good things for Jordan Groshans, because I think he could be good.
Before we talk a little more on Jordan, am I right, Braxton Garrett being optioned to AAA Jacksonville?
Yeah, what the crust?
Yeah, that surprised me. My assumption was that if not going to a straight 6-man rotation, that they would do something similar to that, because Braxton Garrett has had a pretty good year. He is, I think we've talked about him plenty of times as somebody that has exceeded our expectations. He looked like a very fringy-ish pitcher last year, and for most of this year, including his last outing yesterday, he looked like a viable starter, not somebody that's all that far behind Trevor and even Luzardo. He might be a little bit behind them. Like, all things considered, he's probably the 6th man of on their starting pitching depth chart. But this is the time of year where I thought they would just ride it out with him on the roster, just because he doesn't really have anything left to prove in the minors. So as you see here, he basically got sent down for Nardi in place of a more traditional reliever. So and Nardi, unfortunately, Alex left. So we could talk bluntly about Andrew Nardi. He's been awful, just awful. As the guy that we feel very highly about him personally, and he was dominant in the minors, but it's not translated at all. He's not had a single good outing at all pitching out of the bullpen. Braxton Garrett, even if you're a suspect of him, he's somebody that could contribute out of the bullpen, if nothing else, and somebody that I just felt like he deserved to be on this roster down the stretch. And instead, by optioning him down, they got to wait 15 days. So he might not come back at all. If he does come back, it'll be at the very end of the year or have to replace somebody due to injury. This is like a really marginal move that not a lot of people are paying attention to. But I think for me, this is baffling. It seems kind of, I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
Yes, on Nardi, he's had 7 appearances this year out of the bullpen, and in every single appearance, he's given up at least 2 walks or hits. He's given up at least 2 base runners every single time.
Yeah,
he's getting 13 earned runs in 8 innings pitched, a 14.63 ERA.
Yeah, and for Braxton Garrett, they're optioning a guy 73 innings, a WHIP of 1.19, an ERA of 3.68, 75 strikeouts. So one of their better starting pitchers, or just overall pitchers being optioned. That's still a really crazy move to see, especially this late in the year. Adam, looking at that list, Groshans, Nardi, Garrett, is there anyone specifically that you really had in mind that, or maybe like that really interested you or anything like that?
Yeah, so I mean, we talked about Groshans. I think he's definitely had a jump start to he's kickstarted his minor league career again with the trade to Miami, and he's been really, really good in Jacksonville. I don't think he'll be a home run power hitter. I think he's been sapped of that with injuries throughout his career in the minor leagues with Toronto. But I do think he will have a lot of doubles power, and I think he'll potentially hit 30 to 35 doubles at his peak. He might be more of a 15 to 20 home run hitter if he once he really cooks it. So that's my take on Groshans. I think the Braxton one, we just talked about it. It's very shocking because even if he doesn't have space in the rotation, which at this point you're just kind of handing out innings to the young guys, which is basically it's counterintuitive to what they're doing, which is they're optioning the young guy. And if he doesn't have a spot in the rotation per se, there's plenty of opportunity to get him involved out of the bullpen, maybe get him 3-4 innings. If a guy doesn't start super well, or if they're getting blown out, go ahead and throw him in there, get some more innings. He should potentially, the way he's been pitching, I would have him as a quasi starter. And there's many ways to get creative with handing out innings, and there's many things Mattingly can do. And I think that's a strategy they should be employing right now. Just let the young guys play, and that's what we've all been saying. And getting innings for guys like Braxton Garrett is key. And just in general, it feels like we're all pretty on the same page with this being kind of more of a puzzling move. So
yeah, he's shocked. I cannot believe it.
Yeah, he's really been their 3rd best starter all year long.
Yeah. How many options does he have left?
Oh, his option years? I think we may have one more year beyond this year where he could get sent down. I mean, of course, this year he's earlier in the year he spent time in the minors as well. It just, as Adam said, this is the time of year where you could get creative with the way that you organize your innings, the way that you distribute your innings. Guys don't need to be in these really rigid roles when you have expanded rosters. Just get the guys who deserve to be here up here. And for somebody like Garrett, if you feel like moving forward, you have this embarrassment of riches in the rotation and he's not one of your top 5, this is a good time to get him acclimated to being a reliever. This is a time where you could toy around with him pitching in different relief situations. This is something that's been on my mind heading into next year is people talk about how much young pitching the Marlins have. They have really exciting young starting pitching, but the bullpen has been a really big issue for this year. And one critical thing about turning this thing around relatively quickly is going to come down to transitioning some of their extra starters into relievers. So I don't know when that's going to start. They haven't really started that. All they've been doing is churning around old guys and trading for Cole Sulser and giving Huascar Brazoban and Jeff Brigham a shot. They've been going really outside the box. Tommy Nance has been in this bullpen for way longer than anybody expected.
Since May.
Yeah, at some point, you want to try to integrate these younger guys with nasty stuff and see what they can do in those roles if they're going to get squeezed out of the rotation. And I'm puzzled why they have not been doing that.
Yeah, if you want to option a lefty or get rid of one outright, a guy like Richard Blyer who's 35, 36, and throws he's essentially a loogie, and he's gets 6 strikeouts per 9 innings. They just extended him, unfortunately, prior to the year. So I think he is here until July next year at least.
unfortunately. I'm not a fan of the player.
Interesting.
If do you guys want to get into that talk with Bruce Sherman and his comments about the team?
Yeah, pretty quickly. If I could pull that up somewhere.
George, what regime do you like better, Sherman regime or the Laurier regime?
Oh,
It's like the battle of the two evils or whatever it is. Like what is it, the
lesser of evils.
lesser of two evils. Yeah. The proof is in the pudding. At least Laurier had a ring.
Yep.
You know,
and GM for the most part.
For the most part, it wasn't as frustrating as it is currently.
No. Mm-hmm.
So that's the lesser of two evils. I'm not saying I liked him, but if you're telling me to pick between the two, I guess I'll pick Laurier.
And what was your reaction to Jeter, stepping down prior to this season? Just want to get your thought on that. Because
weak. I don't know. I expected more from him as a person, as a competitor.
Yeah.
It just goes to show you that he really wasn't in it wholeheartedly. And I don't know if it was because, and we'll see in the future if he takes another job, with the Yankees or whatever maybe, or them will be. Is it a political thing to get, experience under his belt? An opportunity, is going to arise and we see him sign next season with the Yankees in some sort of position? Or did he just not like the role? If it's the latter, it's more understandable, but it's still, given your allure as a competitor and this anti-quitter style type of guy, I don't know. I just didn't expect it. I think it's just a weak move on him, especially that we ended up signing Soler and ended up, did spending money. If his one thing was that we didn't spend money, like there was movement, and and the team looked good in the beginning of the season on paper, at least, Yeah. So I just didn't. I was kind of shocked by it.
Yeah, to give people the cliff notes of this email exchange between Bruce Sherman and Barry Jackson of the Miami Herald, he doesn't say a whole lot in here. I mean, the main thing is that Barry loves to push people about payroll, and Bruce was non-committal about upping the payroll. So this year they're like $80 million, which is 26th in baseball. It's near the bottom. It's not as far down as they were a couple of years ago, but still near the bottom. And the fact that there's this new TV deal in place and naming rights and even more MLB money coming in moving forward, in that he's not even like fully committed into giving them kind of room to outspend some of the mistakes that they've made, that's a little concerning, because that's going to be a huge component of turning this around, is actually having some wiggle room to take another shot at free agents. Not all of them are going to turn out the way that Avi has turned out. That's kind of a realistic worst case scenario. There are other opportunities to improve the team if you have that flexibility to spend. So he's non-committal on that, but he's also pretty straightforward about having no interest in selling the team. So, which isn't a crazy premise to float, because it has been 5 full years to this point. But he, to this point, not really tipping his hand one way or the other about potentially putting it on the market. Still says he is fully invested, kind of emotionally invested is what he means in this team moving forward. And that, but he also was pretty blunt about the fact that they're going to have to make some staffing changes. Like people are going to lose their jobs after this year, even if he doesn't say specifically who. We know that Kim Ng is safe, and we know that Caroline O'Connor is safe. I don't know if casual fans are all that familiar with Caroline O'Connor, but she came in also with Jeter, like somebody who Jeter personally leaned on very much for all the non-baseball related aspects of running a franchise. And she seems to be content sticking around even beyond Jeter. So the question is literally everybody else in that front office around Kim, all the coaches at both the major league levels and the minor league levels, as well as just a wide variety of people. And we've seen some of them already leave the organization, in like Gary Denbo, saw him go, Michael Hill going back a few years as well. And like they're already at a situation where it feels like they have less brain power and less personnel running the show right now than most other organizations. So they're going to have to, it's going to be a very busy offseason in terms of just bringing in people that have good ideas and that can collaborate well and that can make a difference pretty quickly. Even though it's difficult to like break down this stuff as you would a player. I mean, they're going to have to be very, very busy on the behind the scenes stuff in order to like catch up with other smarter organizations that get more out of their talents than the Marlins have been doing. Like that's been one of the main things in general about this organization is just not getting the most out of their talent for a team that needs that kind of efficiency in order to keep pace with the bigger market teams.
Yeah, and it's just been something it's really frustrating to kind of just hear owners be this hubristic about their fan bases and just having these kind of comments in general. I will kind of have to say, like with Loria and Sherman, like, yeah, Sherman's bad, but Jeffrey Loria is a case study, should be a case study of who to not hire or who to not give a sports bid to for a selling team in any sort of like professional sports league ever. The fact that he has run 2 franchises into the ground in cities and it made them miserable sports cities, it's been awful, or at least baseball towns. In regards to Sherman, it's just a very like hypocritical statement to make. Like franchise must look in the mirror because you, like my brother in Christ, you are the actual team. Like you are running the whole squad and like you are responsible at large for whenever it doesn't actually work out. And I think when you make these kinds of statements, it really only further alienates the fan base. He needs to understand that it's who he hires and it's his ideology, because everyone usually gets replenished in one way or another during the regime of an ownership. And that's really happened over the cycle of the past 5 years. And it's about who he brings on and how much, and which is really a reflection of how much effort he puts into it, because he has to research everything before he actually makes decisions. And he's not hiring the right personnel, which tells me he's not putting in as much effort as he really should be. And it's an indictment of his aptitude as a baseball owner, because there are very good ones. I mean, yes, it's a business for everyone, and some owners spend more or less than others, but just because they spend less doesn't mean that they're not invested to win. It's because they realize they can win with less money. So if you can, why would you spend more if you don't have to? So that's really been the frustrating thing that I've really seen. So
and with that, let's get into our series preview. It's going to be kind of short for this one because I want to talk about some other topics, but we'll be discussing Marlins and the Philadelphia Phillies going against division rival. And I think this is a new record. We've got almost 43 minutes and not one mention of Sandy. I don't know what's up there. Today's Sandy Day, also Jordan Groshon's day. But let's look at these lineups. But before that, George, give me your take on Sandy. Is he the Cy Young winner? What has been your entire review of Sandy as maybe the only bright spot on this dreaded season?
Yeah, it's been great to watch, man. Like you said, it's the bright spot of the season. It's entertaining. I really hope they give it to him, because it's crazy to be able to do that with no run support. Mm-hmm. But maybe they might look at it like he's only pitching that way because he has no run support, and the pressure is on him every day. And I don't know. I don't think they give it to him because it's the Marlins. And I'm just a pessimist in that sense that we don't get the respect that we don't deserve any respect. We're in the bottom of the totem pole right now. We're not putting any effort in. We aren't a high energy ball club. Jazz is hurt. He's, a lone star right now. And that's how they're going to see it. And it's a bold take. I really want him to get it. I think he really deserves it. He's a horse, but I just, how the MLB works and how it's been in the past, I just don't see it happening. I hope to be wrong, be proved wrong.
Oh, it'd be the first one in franchise history. And you just think about the individual pitching seasons that the Marlins have had in their history, and that they've never won one. Maybe you're onto something. He is a slight heavy favorite still. I think he's minus 300.
I don't know. When I looked at it more recently, I think it's down a little bit even from that number. He was an overwhelming favorite just a few weeks ago, but to be fair, if we got to be honest about it, he has been slumping for the last few weeks, where he's no longer the ERA leader in the National League. No. He's still working deep in the games, but only has had one complete game, I think, since the All-Star break.
I think that's the Dodgers game.
Yeah, it was the last Dodgers game. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's getting a little dicey. It's dicey where he does need to perform like these last few weeks in order to fully lock it up, which
Yeah.
is then again that's an extra incentive to tune in, just knowing that this stuff really does matter for his case. And I think a lot of us want this for him so badly because he should not be held responsible, accountable for the mistakes of his supporting cast and everybody around him. Like this, with this Cy Young award, it's supposed to be very individual focused. And when there is a guy that is clearly head and shoulders above the others, there's usually nothing that can stand in the way of that. But the narrative matters as well. And he's going to have to finish strong. That means doing a little bit better. He faced his Phillies team last week, and there were moments in that where it looked like that was going to be a special outing, and then he kind of got tripped up in the middle innings there. And if I look back on it, I think he was hurt by
defense.
That was the JJ Bleday error, wasn't it? Where
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Which one?
Go.
Eli, let me ask you really quick. What's the percentage you give on Sandy winning? If it's still in the 80s, 90s?
79.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think it's better than 50-50.
Yeah,
He's
I
the
go
favorite.
70%.
Yeah.
I'm probably
65, 70.
Something not going in his
that?
favor lately, and I don't know if it's like a Marlins thing, is that they always it seems to be always giving him like a really tough lineup behind him. Now, look at the lineup that Miami's supporting out there today. On days that you have Sandy pitching, put your best guys out there. I don't want Brian De La Cruz.
LeBlanc at fifth.
In center field, you have Nick Fortes batting cleanup, where he has a career 300 slugging percentage in the minor leagues. He's hitting fourth for your ace. Anyway, I know. I understand
the Cy Young race. Is it still Max Fried?
It would be Fried or
It's Fried or it's Urias, who now leads the National League in ERA. And for Zach Gallen, he probably would have needed to push his scoreless streak a little bit farther in order to make a late run at it. It's mainly just Fried and Urias, and I think everybody else would just be a huge stretch.
So no Edwin Diaz. We're not gonna get Edwin Diaz first place votes.
Nah, there's gonna be some third place votes for Edwin Diaz, I imagine. He's gonna be on the ballot somewhere.
Yeah. Last reliever to win Cy Young.
Eric Gagne.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Ooh.
Look at George from the top row. The Rivera never. Yeah, I don't think Rivera won.
He was second. I believe. I forgot who won it. I think Bartolo Year or somewhere like that. But I digress. Looking at this Phillies lineup again, it's all red. We went over those last week with Alex Carr, just talking about the same thing. How we see so much red in the Phillies lineup. Kyle Schwarber, another guy, the Marlins. I think we're at least targeting or discussing or who we wanted for them to sign, turning out to be a great signing for the Phillies in terms of power hitting. Rhys Hoskins, they have former Marlin legend JT Realmuto, and one of the best players in baseball, Bryce Harper, coming back from injury. Again, this is a great lineup. It kind of falls off in that second half, but you still have guys like Gene Segura who get out there and hit. Adam, looking at Phillies lineup, is there maybe a player that really stands out to you, not named Bryce Harper?
Yeah, no, that's probably the popular pick because it's Bryce Harper. But I mean, if you're gonna have a guy who's gonna tee off at any point, it would probably be a guy like Kyle Schwarber, as you mentioned. He's that true three true. I can't say it. You know what I'm trying to say? The 3 true outcome guy. Yeah, and he's been an absolute monster this year. I think he's leading the National League in home runs this year, and I think he's obviously in competition with Goldschmidt. And I think, for me, it's honestly it's been Schwarber all year, who has been amongst one of their best players, potentially, obviously, a team MVP if it wasn't for Aaron Nola. But yeah, I think for me, it's definitely Kyle Schwarber.
Yeah, George, looking at these lineups, same question. On the Marlins side, it's a lot of blue. It's a lot of guys who aren't even qualified. And then you look at the opposite side, a lot of red, a lot of hard hitting, a lot of top tier players. Just what really sticks out to you when you look at these two lineups on screen?
I see a lot of red missing in comparison. And that's we just can't be putting out these type of lineups when Sandy's pitching. We just got to find our guys that, do the best that we can. Cooper is, I guess, the guy if you're looking at these numbers. But you know, it's a shame that we don't. Hopefully, Groshans can fill some shoes, but I don't know, man. It's not looking as pretty as the Phillies over there. Yeah,
Yeah.
that strikeout rate's not pretty.
I did want to just shout out Cooper, who he's turned it on again.
Yeah.
It was right at this time last week that he flipped the switch. He went from being the worst hitter in the world to being like kind of normal Garrett Cooper again. It's nothing special, but it's very important for this team, especially moving forward, just having confidence that this was it was a long slump, but he is kind of what he's been the last few years, which is an above average hitter, somebody that at least has a spot in your lineup and is good situationally. So that is the one bright spot, is that he actually is performing the way that he's supposed to going down the stretch of the season. And of course, we mentioned Charles LeBlanc, who just really quietly just continues to be an above average hitter as well. And it's good that they're playing him pretty frequently right now down the stretch. So they're facing another lefty. And as we know, most of this year, they've been terrible, especially terrible against left-handed pitching. But they put up a decent fight against this guy, Bailey Falter, when they faced him in Philly just last week. Maybe they're turning the corner a little bit in that department, because it's not possible to be as bad as they have been all year against lefties. And this is better, as good a time as any to at least end off on a bright spot in those matchups.
Yeah. I think now is a great time. I want to go away from talking to Marlins. Let's talk about some other positives. I wanted to ask you, George, Mr. Yates, is there anything from the Marlins really that stands out to you, as being a fan, maybe your favorite Marlins memory of being a fan or being at the ballpark? Is there something that when you think of the Marlins, it's the first thing, your first memory from the Fish?
I'd go back to, I'm big on branding, so teal and black and pinstripes and this logo. And the thing of baseball and what makes it beautiful is this conversation of nostalgia and tradition and growing up with a team. And when you're changing logos, changing colors, changing things around so often, you lose that. You lose a sense of community. You lose a sense of tradition. You got to start from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I know they might be big on wanting to be this new brand, this new face, this new thing that they've created, but that's not what it is. If they want to really resonate with the community and resonate with those fans that have been in it for the 30 years, you need to kind of go back to the ground roots. And that's just my opinion.
And how would you feel? We talked about this earlier in the chat. Sorry, Adam. For the 30-year anniversary next year, there's some, not speculation, we were just talking about it in the group chat about possibly having a series back at Sun Life Stadium or Landshark, whatever it's called right now.
Hard Rock
Stadium.
Hard Rock.
Sorry, Hard Rock. So I remember that's Marlins times. But yeah, imagine having a series there, wearing the pinstripes. Is that something that, like, for example, a faraway fan, would you go for that?
For sure. I don't care how hot the stadium will be, how far the game will be. I would probably go to all 3 games of that series, and make it a turn back the clock and a sleeveless jerseys and, like if it's 2001 Ken Griffey style or whatever year that was, not to that extent. Obviously, we don't need to. We can just do the normal pinstripes. I don't think that'll ever happen. That's just pure speculation on our end. Yep. That'd be beautiful. But I think we can still do it in Miami, be the Miami Marlins, just get back to teal and black and just keep riding the tradition with a new name in front of it.
Do you think they screwed up the location of this new ballpark? Should they have stayed in the Tri-County area up north, or do you like that it's in Miami now?
No, I like it. If you had a winning ball club, there'd be people there.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Yeah, he's right, 100%.
And talking about winning, George, really quick, how were the Dolphins? What do you think of Tua and the debut of Tyreek Hill? Because that was pretty great.
The defense looked great. Tyreek looked good. I love Tua. He did well. Didn't do great. I think everyone knows that, but he didn't do bad. So, I think the ceiling is a lot higher than what we showed on the field last week. Mm-hmm. And we still did well against a New England Patriot team, Bill Belichick, rookie coach, against the modern GOAT. I like the post conferences. I like what he liked to say. I like where we're going moving forward. I think we're in a good spot, man. I'm excited about the Dolphins.
Yeah. tough matchup next week versus the Ravens. But let's go to our favorite time. Eli, can we cue up that video, please?
This is prediction time.
It's time.
I believe that's his voice. I still don't believe it.
Well, here are the predictions really quick. And we're tied for first. I finally did it, Eli. When you give Eli 4 sips of wine, this is what happens. I
forgot about that. You're right. I compromised myself, and that's made the difference. Almost everybody was on the money with predicting the Mets to win that series, and I was the only one that went against it. And that has changed the entire spectrum of this race. We are tied. With just a few weeks to go. This is on par with like some of the biggest collapses in baseball history. If it goes in this direction, you've been creeping closer and closer. But I am sober tonight, so be afraid.
And then we have Kevin, Isaac right behind him, and then we have Alex, Noah, Lewis, and then I believe
I will catch up. I will catch up to Kevin at least for sure, and then
I'm proud of my start for doing this for a month now. I feel pretty confident with what I've done so far. 15 points.
For predictions, Isaac, start us off with your prediction as always, series prediction, and who will be MVP.
I think the Marlins win 2 out of 3. I think they win Sandy Day, and you got Pablo, and you got Edward. I think they got their 3 best pitchers on the bump. And there's a Phillies team that, Nick Castellanos is hurt. Their line, I know Nick Mattson, whatever his name is, got Sandy last time, but it's Lone Depot is a lot different than Citizens Bank. So I'm going to go Marlins win 2 out of 3. MVP will be Sandy Alcantara.
Ooh, nice. All right, Adam, you're up.
All right, so I'm going to go Marlins lose 2 out of 3. So I'm going to say they win one of the games. The other one, they say the MVP, I'm going to go ahead and go with JT Realmuto as my pick. That's probably our safest bet here.
Right. Marlins legend. Eli, your prediction.
I have the Phillies winning this series 2 out of 3. It should be a very closely contested series as well. But this Marlins team, I get burned every time I put them in line to win a series. So Phillies win 2 out of 3. MVP, I'm going Bryce Harper. It's been a while since he's actually had a big impact in a Marlins versus Phillies series. He is overdue to come up with some big hits, and I think he'll do just that.
All right, and now for our guest, Mr. H, George, your series prediction, who's going to win this series, and then your MVP from I could be either team, hitter or pitcher.
Yeah, I agree with the last prediction. I think the Phillies take the series 2 out of 3. Sandy wins his 1 game, but Bryce Harper is overdue, and with those numbers and just how good he is, man, it's hard not to give it to him. So yeah, MVP Bryce Harper, Phillies win 2 out of 3.
All right. And for me, yours truly. Let me give Kevin's first. He agrees with, I believe, Eli and Marlins take 2 out of 3. Or excuse me, Marlins take 2 out of 3. Sandy MVP. They win the first 2 games. He says he feels good about this series. Thor was kind of meh last time.
All right,
and I have to give you one from Noah because this is a first for us. He has the Marlins winning 2 out of 3. His MVP is, I guess, temporary Marlins closer Dylan Floro. That's his MVP.
Wow. Okay.
He wanted to stand out in the series.
All right. And for me, I have Marlins winning 1 game, and I have Alec Boehm as my MVP. I think Alec Boehm has been really hot this season, one of the better hitters, and I think he's going to reek against the Fish, and he's my MVP, while Marlins only win 1 game.
Okay, so we're going to remain tied atop the leaderboard unless either Boehm or Harper win MVP.
See, I got to do this when it's a really good series, so I know the Marlins either win or they get swept or they sweep. But that's going to do it for us here tonight. Is there anything anyone wants to mention before we go?
No, sir.
All right.
No, let's get out of here.
All right. For myself, for Isaac, for Eli, for Adam, George, Mr. Ethan, it's so great to have you on. You're welcome back anytime. And as always, go Fish.
We got to end it off right. We got to